good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm really excited to have Solala Towler here today to explore the medicine of the Tao and also how this can be weaved in and complement psychedelic preparation and integration. And many of you might know me, but my name is Dr. Lani. I'm the founder and director of Signs of Life Psychology, a platform that is really here to support the growing ecology of psychedelic medicines in Australia from a research perspective, therapy and education programs. And just really excited to be here. And before we hand it over to Solala, we will do a acknowledgement. So you might like to close your eyes if that feels right for you. And just dropping into this space together. We'll call it Cyber Tao. Just acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands in which we come from, particularly here in Australia as we move into NAIDOC week. Just honouring the custodians of our lands, their wisdom, their dreaming, the animals, the plants, bodies of land that we can draw strength from. As we call in these elements and these wisdom traditions, I just ask you to think of a place in Australia or for wherever you're from. Might be a river, a mountain, lake, a space that really nourishes you, you feel connected to. And today, also acknowledging the incredible work that's going on around the world to bring these medicines to the mainstream to help address complex mental health, treatment-resistant conditions, because our clients, our friends, our family members need more. They need more help. And may we bring these medicines with wisdom, with grace and integrity, and learn how to weave with complementary medicines such as the Tao to really stabilize these altered states of consciousness in a really embodied way. Gracias, everyone. All right. So Solala, might hand it over to you just to introduce yourself and a little bit about what brought you to this work, and then we'll explore a range of topics.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. I'm here representing Taoism. Taoism is a 5,000-year-old spiritual philosophical practice from China. Goes way back to the shamans, which many religions around the world do, right? Have their roots in shamanism. In China, shamanism was called Wu, and it was mostly women who were doing the shamanism. So these kind of practices of meditation, Qigong, Chinese medicine, all these things, well, also feng shui, Chinese calligraphy, painting, pottery, a lot of astrology, meditation, all these things come from the Taoist roots. I'm an American, I'm a Western, I was born in the US, not in China. I've been to China a number of times, but for me, it's how do I make it real for my life? I'm not trying to be a pseudo Chinese person, but how do I make it real in my life? And I liked what you said earlier about integration, because that's a big part of what Taoism is about. How do we find integration between ourselves and the natural world, or our own nature and the other part of the world? In Taoism, we have a phrase, Zhenren, which means authentic person. Usually you'll see it translated as the perfect man or something like that, but what it really means is authentic person, someone who is in touch with who they are authentically and then knows how to express themselves authentically, which is a hard thing to do for many people. So I don't have any problem with the work you're doing. I know these medicines have been used for probably thousands of years, and medicine comes in a lot of different ways. It comes as plant, it comes as visions, it comes as drumming and singing, it comes in meditation and fasting and all these things that people have used for thousands of years all over the planet, right? So Taoism is sort of just the Chinese take on that, Chinese version of all that stuff. So I've been studying this stuff for a little over 30 years. And I came to it when I was very sick. I had chronic fatigue syndrome for 10 years, to the point that I was totally bedridden. And I had 3 children. I was married. Fortunately, the mom was there, but I was totally bedridden. And Chinese herbs got me out of bed. And then Qigong is what cured me. And chronic fatigue syndrome is an incurable disease in Western medicine. They think it's some sort of autoimmune disease. They don't really understand it in Western medicine. So I'm a big believer in Chinese medicine and Qigong and these kinds of things. Yeah, so I'm happy to answer any of your other questions, Alana.
Yeah, and I might explain to the group why I had the inspiration to create this this webinar. And I guess my ayahuasca lineage weaves very strongly with Taoist medicine, and as you said, Taoist practices aren't, you know, connected to psychedelics. Typically, you're not necessarily endorsing psychedelics, but we're here to talk about weaving complementary medicines. But the lineage that I work with, we often drink ayahuasca through the night and then have a short sleep, which is surprising how you don't need a lot of sleep with ayahuasca. You wake up feeling really invigorated, typically. Mm. And then we sit by a mountain and drink pua tea, which is an incredible tea that you can explain later. Just opens up your sight and your vision, and you can connect in, I feel, much stronger to the natural world around you. And then we do calligraphy, so Qigong. And it was those experiences that led me to look at your book, the hopefully I say the name right, the 81 ways of practicing the Tao. Got it?
Tao Te Ching, 81 steps on the way.
Mm-hmm. And that book really took the messages and made them very embodied and very real. And I guess that's what I'm here today with you to discuss, is how can we really integrate these practices in a practical way into our life. So I guess the first question is, what is Taoism? How would you describe it to, you know, the layperson?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, it's a 5,000-year-old tradition going back to Wu shamans. This book that you're talking about, my book here, Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching is actually the second most widely translated book in the world after the Bible. So there's many different translations. And it's also, the book itself is 2,500 years old. 2,500 years ago, a man who name was Lao Dan, but usually he's known by the title Lao Tzu, which means old master. And the thing that's fun about Chinese is the character for Tzu is almost like a 3 with a line through it. It can mean master, it can also mean child. So we have that idea of becoming a child, right? And sometimes you see his name translated as the old boy. And he had this cushy job in the government. He was head of the whole library in the Zhou dynasty, but he spent time with the Wu people, the shamans. He spent a lot of time doing what we call self-cultivation. And he saw that politically things were really crazy, somewhat like our time now. And China was going into what historians call the Warring States period. So just the title there can tell you what was going on. And he decided to drop out of society, and he went west and went into what the Chinese consider the wilderness. And just on the very last gateway to leave China proper, the guy who was there a few days before. So this is the story. Not all scholars believe in the story. I like stories. So the story is the guy was looking out and he saw a purple cloud coming toward him. So he knew some sort of high being was coming. So when Lao Tzu arrived, he prevailed upon him to write something down, because Lao Tzu had not written any books. Lao Tzu at first refused. And it's kind of interesting that even many tribal people, even today, the idea of taking their stories, taking their teachings and writing it down and imprisoning it on a page because the story always changes depending on the year, who's in the audience, how the storyteller's feeling, all those kinds of things. So he didn't want to put it on paper, but Yin Shi was the guy's name, and he helped him. He changed his mind. But the very first line of the Tao Te Ching is Dao Te Dao Fei Chang Dao, the Tao that can be written about, or put in a little cage in a little square, defined by words, is not the real Tao. So that's the first line of the whole book. And it's a pretty short book. It's not very long. And then he went off and was never seen again. So he didn't stop and start a cult or anything. And Taoism itself, Lao Tzu was not a Taoist. Buddha was not a Buddhist, right? Jesus was not a Christian, certainly not a Catholic. And it wasn't until 1,000 years later that a Taoist religion was formed. So in the beginning, it was just people like Lao Tzu and the main teacher after him, named Zhuangzi, very important old teachers. And they were about, how can we free ourselves? How can we become free, authentic beings in the world and still be in the world? Or, what the Bible says, be in the world, but not of it, not caught up in it, not entangled with what the Buddhists would call entangled with the duality of the world. So these teachings have come down a long ways, and there's kind of two tracks of Taoism in modern times, is the Tao Jia and the Tao Zhou. Tao Jia is like what we call lay Taoism. Sometimes it's called philosophical Taoism. It has nothing to do with religion. It's really the ideas and the practices. And then Tao Zhou is the religious aspect, where they have monks and nuns and many rules and regulations and temples and do lots of ceremonies and things. So there's kind of two streams, and I'm of the Tao Jia stream because I'm not interested in becoming a priest. And I find a lot of value in what the old guy said, the old ones. Yeah, so that's a little tiny portion there.
Yeah, and that first line, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao, is something that I meditated on quite strongly after my first ayahuasca journey in the jungle, which was quite destabilizing, but destabilizing at the same time, because I opened up to such wider phenomena that I wanted to make sense of it. I wanted to write it down. I wanted to understand it. And, that's what many people experience in psychedelics is such a strong opening to the universal forces and energy, yet the mind, the monkey mind, wants to tame it and name it. And a lot of anxiety and distress can occur. So it's it's almost like a beautiful mantra or a meditation point to really drop into those deeper realms of medicine, that we don't need to name it. We can feel it. We can drop into that felt sense that is beyond words.
Yes, and original Taoism, Tao Jia, does not believe in a personalized Godhead of some personalized human-like being in the sky who's watching everybody and punishing and rewarding everyone. They're more into nature. Nature is the greatest teacher, and the universe is self-creating and self-sustaining. So being nature, these ayahuasca, peyote, other medicines, ancient medicines open doors for us, right? In ancient times in China, just like in the West, people were doing external alchemy, way down it's called, and they were trying to make gold out of lead, and they were trying to make a pill of immortality for the emperor, because the emperors wanted to live forever because they had the best job in the country, right? But they were using like cinnabar and lead and these very toxic substances, and many emperors actually died from taking those pills, including the first emperor who united all the kingdoms to what we now call China. But then they started realizing maybe there's another way we could go at it, and we could start doing inner alchemy and using the energies of our own body, the different kinds of organs and chi fields and all this kind of thing, and work with that and create a real pill of immortality. If not living forever, at least living very healthy, wise, happy, holy. So that's more the emphasis on Taoism.
Beautiful. Can you take us through some of the main principles?
Yes, there are some beautiful principles. The main one I would say that covers all of it is called Wu Wei. WUWEI, and it means not forcing, not overextending, not overdoing. You know, if you live your life in the way, then, well, there's another principle that goes right together with it, is called the watercourse way, what we might call going with the flow. So in order to get anything done, we don't want to force anything, right? We don't want to try to force things to happen, whether it's a job or a relationship, or, you know, anything really. How do we do that? We do that by finding the flow, the watercourse way in our life. And everyone's flow may be a little different, because it's just like yin yang. Yin is sort of the more receptive, quieter, earth kind of energy, and yang is more dynamic, expanding sun energy, and we need both. And sometimes we're in a very young period of our life. Sometimes we're in a yin period. It has nothing to do with gender. We all have yin yang within ourselves. So using some of these principles, like, well, the other principle is called manzo, which is go slowly. So in order to really find where the watercourse way is in that moment, we need to move very slowly. We need to think very slowly, speak very slowly, listen very slowly to someone else, and find that watercourse way, and then be able to use the principle of wu-wei, not to overdo anything, but do just enough to create what we want to create. So those are some of the main principles that we use today in everyday life.
As you speak, I feel I have not mastered the art of going slow in work and my academic realms, but I'm learning to go slow with my medicines, because it is a process. It's a mystical unfolding. It requires, the discipline of not rushing, of, you know, seeing those threads, those lessons. And I feel that's my strength in that realm. But the work realm is still quite fast.
You know, in the old days in China, when you're saying goodbye to someone, nowadays they say zaijian, which means basically bye, but they would say manzo, go slowly away from me. And there's eat slowly, listen slowly, move, you know, Tai Chi or Qigong, you move very slowly, which some people have a hard time with.
Well, I think
that's power. There's actually a power in going slowly, is what I mean to say. That people don't realize. They think power is moving really fast and getting a lot done and really, you know, making a lot of money, making the connections, getting everything going, but actually moving slowly can be very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Any other principles there that you'd like to speak to before we move on to the cyclic nature of living?
One called Pu, P-U, which means being natural. Pu is usually translated as the uncarved wood. It's like the wood before the carver makes a beautiful statue of Guanyin or something. They would traditionally go into the forest, look at all the trees, and then find the tree that had that statue already in it, bring that home and just cut the extraneous bits off to reveal the beautiful statue of Guanyin in it. So being natural, being real, we live in a world that's very unnatural. And for many people, even using natural medicine, whether it's psychedelics or Chinese herbs, it's kind of scary for them, or they don't believe in it. How could that possibly work? I go to my doctor and he gives me highly specialized pharmaceuticals, and that's what works. Yes, I have to take another one because I get side effects from the first one. I have to take, and then there's another one because of the side, it goes on. And to use natural medicine or living a natural way, even though we live in a very unnatural world, that's also can be very powerful.
And I think that speaks to the fear behind psychedelic medicines and getting these to the mainstream, is that it is changing the paradigm from the pharmaceutical model, which has its place, but really giving strength back to the natural world and also your own inner healer, which is very challenging for the medical model and the powers that be.
Yes, well, we do a lot. Poor thing, she's got a cold there. We do a lot of work with meditation. Taoist meditation is called there's many different kinds of Taoist meditation, which makes it kind of unique. it's not just about calming your spirit, calming your heart. There are other times when we're moving energy around to different organs and up different pathways, up the back, down the front, or moving along all the organs. Because Chinese medicine has a very, well, it goes back to Taoist medicine, really has a really interesting feeling that our organs, 5 major organs, the liver, the lungs, the spleen, the liver, liver, the heart, the spleen, the lungs, and the kidney adrenal system, have very special, specific energies about them, which is very different than Western medicine. And they have colors and power animals. You know, the liver, the power animal is the green dragon. The heart is the red phoenix. The spleen is the yellow dragon. The lungs are the white tiger, and the kidneys are the black turtle. So working with Taoist medicine, you're calling in those, just like, you know, people have been doing for thousands of years. They're connected to directions and colors and seasons and all that kind of stuff. It all comes into play, which makes it kind of unique.
And again, just how complementary that is to psychedelic medicine work, particularly shamanic lineages where, you know, power animals are very present, also in Indigenous Australian medicine. And it really opens us up beyond our, you know, linear, rational, practical mind into this world of drawing on, you know, drawing on the strength of these different elemental forces and different animals. And I really invite people, if you are going through the process of psychedelic preparation and integration, to open up to consider, you know, play with those realms of animals, of plants, of the elements. And you can do that in many ways through, you know, setting up your altar, setting up specific cards, animal cards, you know, there's certain prayers and meditation to connect in with your power animal. And often people go on a vision quest where they are met, you know, the animal comes forward. And yeah, mine at the moment is the hummingbird. For those who may not know, the hummingbird is an animal, a lot of courage and I guess bravery, because it, well, first of all, it feasts on sugar. Basically, everything it eats is sugar, and it has the fastest heartbeat during the day of all birds. And then at night, it goes through almost like a death process where its heart nearly stops. And then each year it runs out of food, and it takes one of the biggest flights known to all birds. They don't actually know scientifically how it makes it. So it sets out for that sweetness in the face of death, and it changes with the seasons. And yeah, so that animal is the animal that I'm working with at the moment. There's so many messages there for me in medicine work. Don't stay stuck. Keep moving in search of that sweetness, and the cycle of life and death that the hummingbird goes on every day, as we all do ourselves, as you know, spiritually having to work through our beliefs around death. So yeah, I invite you all to consider what your animals are, because it's beautiful medicine.
Yeah, you know, in Taoism, one of the old teachers 2,000 years ago, Chuang says, like a lot of tribal people say, there used to be a time where people and animals could speak to each other in a language they both understood. They could speak to animals. People could respected the animals, not feeling like human beings were the greatest life form on earth, that they were equal with, not only with animals, with the plants, the trees, the mountains, the forests, the rivers. And then people started, what he calls, started making distinctions. Okay, I'm a human being. I'm the top of the heap. You're just an animal, a plant. You don't have that much intelligence, really. And once people started going down that road, he says Tao is lost, or connection to Tao, to source with a capital S, was lost. And many people around the world talk about that time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said. Would anything else you'd like to say about the cyclic nature of living?
About the what?
The cyclic nature of living.
Yeah, that's a big thing in Taoism. You know, in the old days, they didn't have books that you could buy a book and read about Chinese medicine or anything. 5,000 years ago, there were no books. And they were they were sitting in nature. They were watching nature. They're, say, watching an animal. What does an animal go and eat when it's sick or injured? And maybe they'll try that plant. It's how they discovered a lot of herbology. Also, the father of Chinese herbology was said to have poisoned himself many times trying different herbs and plants. And then he had to come up with a cure antidote for that. And they still use 2,000 years ago, they still use the same herbal remedies, prescriptions that we use really in ancient times. So it's a kind of medicine that's, acupuncture, a lot. I'm sure a lot of people here know what acupuncture is and probably even had acupuncture. That the idea is they went deep within in meditation and sort of followed where energy moves in their body, where the energy, the streams, the rivers, the highways, where it was coming from each organ into another, or perhaps going down like the liver meridian goes all the way down to the big toe. The kidney meridian starts at the bottom of the feet, and they tracked all that because there wasn't books about it, because they were going into deep meditative trance-like shamanic states. Now you can go to college and learn all that, Chinese medicine school and learn all that. But a lot of it was just being very quiet, just looking at nature and seeing, wow, then in the spring, everything's being reborn. And then the summer is like full on, everything's like very active. And then it's fall, they see things are starting to die back down. In winter, everything's very, at least in the, well, it happens in different, I'm in the north part of the world, so I'm in summer now and you're in a different one, but they have the 4 seasons everywhere, even in Southern California. And deciding, well, our lives are the same. We're born, we're very, everything's new and fresh. We're children, we're just learning. We have to learn so much, how to speak a language, how to control our body, all those kinds of things, how to feed ourselves, all the kind of things you learn. And then it's like summer, you get to run around and be crazy as a kid. And the fall, you're starting to grow up a little bit. You go to school, you're trying to learn on a different way. And then winter is you're in your later part of the life and getting ready for, as winter happens, your energy also will die back into the universe, into the world, into Tao, into the earth, to be reborn again at some point.
Beautiful. And it really resonates me, the cyclic nature of working with medicines. The lineages that I work with, we often celebrate in ceremony, sacred ceremony, in equinox and solstice, and really setting up your intentions for those 3 months, and working with the alchemy of I'm a mesa holder, so that's different crystals and different elements that you put prayers and hopes and intentions into, and you sit with that cycle, and then you move on to the next. And it's such a beautiful embodied process. And also through the ayahuasca lineage, the dietary process, when we do the 10-day process, there's fasting on that, and it's not for everyone. You've got to check medically, of course, if you can fast, but just the dropping into the deep listening of the natural world. And often, personally, I need to remove things like coffee and salt, sugar, alcohol, all those things, really strip the body back to its, a really pure form, and to actually sit and hear the natural world, to really listen, is incredible. And we can all do that without psychedelics, of course. And again, just in the preparation and integration phases, I really invite you to see and pay attention to the changes. And also in women, in the cycle that women go through each month, there's some beautiful work that can be done there around being aware of those cycles and tuning into the subtleties of those realms. So I can send out some resources as well if anyone's interested in that, because we've done a bit of writing on that.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because nowadays women's menses, this is thought of in a sort of clinical, health thing, and oh, it's irritating, and I just use these Kotex or tampons or something, and it's just they're not feeling that it's a powerful thing, that they're connecting with the moon and all other women on their moon as well. I think it's great that you're doing that kind of work to really empower people. That's the thing. We don't want to just have somebody lean on us, or, you know, a lot of religions, you have to believe, you have to have faith, no matter what they say, you have to believe it to empower someone, for them to find their own knowledge, their own beauty, their own power. That's the best. And I think that's the work you're doing with things like ayahuasca. It's very empowering. It's not about trying to push people to take more drugs or, you know, pharmaceuticals. It's for people to be able to be empowered to then go their own way and
Yeah,
go their way on the watercourse way.
exactly. Or follow a guru or a dogma of an altar. And, you know, the altars that I work with, you know, multi-faith, multi-philosophical, you know, it's the altars that just continue to help people open to their own mystery, their own interpretation of the mystery. And yeah, that embodied kind of wisdom, how it fits for you. And I think we just need to be cautious of that in the medicine world, you know, because as you said, it should be slowly, and it should be, you know, activating kind of your own inner healer without that dogma. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think dogma just gets in the way. But, you know, for a lot of people, this idea of not having a personalized Godhead is very scary for a lot of people. Because then if I have to believe in this God who's watching over everything and rewarding and punishing people, and if I don't have that in my life, they feel kind of like, whoa, what do I believe in? And it might be very scary for them.
Yeah.
But people, if you just follow like the work you're doing, follow what people have been doing for thousands of years on this planet, of connecting with big N nature, and then connecting their own inner nature with that nature. In Taoism, nature is considered the highest level teacher, more than any book. But you have to know how to hear it, right? You have to know how to see it. You have to know how to connect with it, which most people have no idea. They go in the woods. Some people are scared by going in the woods, you know, because they've lived in a city their whole life, or they go to the country and it seems it's so quiet. It kind of freaks them out because they're used to living in New York City with all the noise. So people have become very, in our culture in modern times, at least in the Western world, or at least for, I think, the greatest population, is very unnatural. And that's not good, because we're destroying the planet around it. We think we can control everything. We can control the climate. We can control people. We can control whole civilizations. And we have diseases now that even our grandparents didn't have. You know, we live in a very polluted world, polluted physically, psychically as well. So how can we disconnect from that? Even while, you know, in ancient times, people would go into the forest to do the vision quest, right? Or go to the mountains. The word like immortal, which is like enlightened being in Chinese, is a character for a person next to the character of a mountain. And, you know, in the Middle East, people would go vision quest in the desert, right? In the Bible, it talks about Jesus went on a vision quest into the desert for 49 days, probably fasting and everything. And he had a vision there that propelled him in his life. And people have been doing that for thousands of years. But my teachers tell me that we need to do our spiritual work also in the cities where we live, wherever we live. We can do retreats, of course, is really good, if not very important, really. But we need to do our work, our spiritual work in the cities, in the world, so that we can help other people, so we can be good examples and good, that we can help other people, basically, be a good influence. Yeah. And that's a high level of Taoist thing, is to be a good influence. Because you're not only influencing one person, but you may be influencing their whole family, or even several generations. You know, China now has become very, very westernized. You go to the cities, it's even more modern than most of the cities in US. I lead groups there. Of course, we haven't gone in a couple of years, but we go up in the mountains And we study with the Taoist people up in the mountains who live very simple Spartan lifestyles, but they're very healthy. They're full of energy and very friendly. You know, there's a guy we go visit when I go to this area called the Wudang Mountains. His name is Jaya, which means old grandfather. And he's an old Taoist guy who lives in a cave, a hermit who lives in a cave, just like people have been doing for thousands of years, right? And he's really friendly, really warm. And, you know, he says things like, we are in, right now, we are in the hug of nature. And he's friends with all the beings in his area, even a whole hive of wild bees that lives right next to where he lives. They're his Taoist friends as well. So there's a few people like that, but it's changing a lot. In modern young Chinese people don't care about any of that stuff. They just want to make money and have a good life.
So there's two things I wanted to flag there. There's a writer, Thomas More, who writes beautifully about a book called Care of the Soul, and talks about, the soul in the city. So the art and the heartbeat of the city, and, you know, the energy of a city. So absolutely, I agree. You don't need to always escape into nature, you know, remote nature. Nature is everywhere. It is everywhere. And art and mystery is everywhere. So I think there's beautiful pieces of integration that can be done in the city when you actually get rid of the noise and then plug into the soul of the city that you're in. And the second comment, just from, I guess, the keeping in mind, if you are going to do psychedelics or continue on the psychedelic journey, one of my teachers says, we drink for all those people who don't drink. And what he means by that is, you know, when you drink medicine, your whole ecosystem around you changes, you change. And there's a seriousness to it as well. There's a responsibility that, when you drink, you're drinking for all those who don't drink. And I personally love that. I see that as a huge gift and very empowering for my family, for my children, for my clients. And but I guess there's a caution there as well. You know, don't drink humbly, and hold the discipline and the sacredness of it, because it does have a ripple-on effect in the field around you.
Well, you know, this book you mentioned, How We Connected, I think, is through this book of mine, my version of Tao Te Ching. And what makes this one a little unique is that I have come up with, a lot of people think of Tao Te Ching as a book of philosophy or statecraft or something, but to the Taoists, they consider it a manual for self-cultivation or spiritual work. So I offer the Lao Tzu's chapters in more of a Taoist perspective. Then I have a commentary to explain it. But what makes it really unique is there's a practice that goes with every chapter. So like a Qigong practice, meditation practice, lifestyle practice, a lot of them come directly from Tao Te Ching, or other ones, they're from the Taoist tradition, so that it becomes a book, not just, you just read this book and now you're done. Every one of the 81 chapters has a practice. That's also what makes Taoism a little unique, is that, and Lao Tzu talks about this a lot. He said, if you just understand something intellectually, you could read a book about what it's like to take ayahuasca and feel like, okay, now I know what it's like to take ayahuasca. But unless you actually drink it, you don't really know. And to understand Taoism intellectually, you only get such a small part of it. He says, empty your mind and fill your belly, meaning empty your mind of intellectual ideas and fill your belly. Like we have three big energy spiritual centers in our body in Taoism that called Dan Tians. Dan Tian means field of elixir or field of medicine, and is one in the lower abdomen, the heart center, and the celestial eye center. So we do a lot of work in Qigong of really bringing it down to the belly level to understand things with our gut knowledge. And of course, now we know there are many brain cells in our gut, right? It's not just up here. So he's constantly saying, get out of your head. There's no way you can understand this unless you do the practices and feel what it's like to do Qigong. Feel what it's like to do Qigong with a tree. I go out and do Qigong every morning with this, my grandmother willow tree, huge willow tree in our backyard. But any tree you can do it with. Go to a park or whatever, but there is a way to open your psychic centers, open your energetic centers, open your spiritual centers, doing these sometimes very simple Qigong practices. Qigong means working with energy, or I like to call it playing with energy. So, and there's a Qigong for everybody, depending on if they're in a wheelchair, if they can only lie down in a bed, whatever their age is, whatever their physical health is, there's a Qigong practice that can work for you. So I like that idea too. It's not, we all have to do one thing. You need to, like you're saying, you need to explore a little bit yourself and try some different things and find what works for you or what you really connect with. And one of the things we were talking about earlier is like this book, Tea Mind, Tea Heart, which is about tea. And Alana mentioned after her journey, they would wake up and drink tea and do calligraphy, maybe a little Qigong, because in Taoism, tea is a big deal. People think, well, sure, the British drink a lot of tea, or we drink a lot of tea. It comes in a little bag and we put it in the hot water and then we drink it down. But you go to any Taoist center or Taoist temple in China and people are doing what they call Cha Dao, the way of tea, the Tao of tea, or doing what we call Kung Fu tea. I have a tea room in my house that my partner Shanti and I do tea together and have other people come over to do tea. And I've been to many Qigong conferences where I've served tea to like 80, 85, 90 people. And tea is a meditation. It's a practice about connecting with the tea itself, which is grown very far away, or you don't have to use Chinese tea. You can do whatever tea grows in your area. Connecting with the plant where the tea comes from, and the plant or even tree where pu'er comes from, trees that are bringing up the beautiful rich earth energy up through their roots and connecting with the beautiful yang energy from the sun and pouring that into their leaves. And then we get to drink that. It's pretty amazing. It's a meditation. It's a way to connect with other people. It's a whole part of Taoism is the tea. And a lot of us drink this pu'er tea. I don't know if you can see here how dark it is. That's not coffee, that's tea. But it's not necessary that you have to do it with Chinese tea. I just happen to love Chinese tea, but I have a tea master friend who says things like, I would rather be served Lipton tea in an old tin can by someone who's very present and in their heart than somebody offering me very, very expensive tea who is not present and not coming from their heart. That's the most important part, coming from your heart, being present. And it's hard to do in this culture, right? In the modern world, to be present, meaning to be in one moment. The Japanese have this term, ichigo ichi, which means this moment, this possibility may not come again. We're in this moment right now. Let's take advantage of that. There was a story I was just reading the other day about a Chan Buddhist master. Chan Buddhism is kind of Taoist flavored Buddhism. And then from China, Chan moved to Japan, where it became what we call Zen. So Zen also has a lot of Taoist parts of it. And the master, whose name was Zhang Zhao or Zhao Zhong, I can't remember which one, he was the abbot of this temple. And when new people would come to the temple to apply to live there, they would meet the abbot. He would ask them, okay, have you been here before? And if they said no, he would say, go drink tea. And if someone came and they said, have you been here before? Yes, many times. Okay, go drink tea. And the guy he worked with said, I don't understand, master. Everyone who comes here, whether they've been here or they've never been here, all you say is go drink tea. I don't get it. So the master said, come closer, come closer. And he kind of leaned over and kind of whispered in his ear, go drink tea. So that's the idea. In Zen, it says you can't understand the taste of Zen unless you know the taste of tea.
Wow. So that's everyone. I recommend after today, go have some tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, particularly there's some beautiful Australian bush teas.
Oh,
Yeah,
that,
you can feel into the power of Indigenous medicine.
Well, you can take anything, like I was saying, whether it's even, the cheapest, crummiest tea, If you can't afford really high quality tea, cheapest Chinese tea. But as you're drinking it, try to be a little present in that moment. Try to feel a little gratitude of wherever the plant or herb came from and whoever picked it for you and processed it, and feeling that link. Any kind of tea, you could even do it with coffee, really. It all comes from where your heart is, your presence is.
Well, I'll speak to I guess 3 medicines that I've worked with, and in lockdown, I did a rose tea dieta. So at home for 10 days. And again, it was a stripping back of, salt and alcohol and dairy and lots of different dietary restrictions. And I actually sat with rose tea. And so I drank it. I also meditated with it. And then we had a practice of bathing with it, and we left the rose out by the moon each night, and then the next night would bath with it. And it was just such a beautiful practice to do during lockdown while the world was falling apart, to just connect in with the vibration of the rose, which is very much like feminine, and love and soft and gentle qualities. And then of course there's cacao ceremonies that are really popular these days. I guess just a caution with that, because it is becoming very popular, just feeling into the facilitator and the prayer and intention, because it is quite a sacred shamanic medicine. And there's a lot of pop culture now behind cacao ceremonies, so you'll know when you have a really good one, because it will open up your heart. You will feel your heart open. And I just wanted to speak to coca leaves, which are used in shamanic practices, and before the West took it and bastardized it and turned it into cocaine. So
Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Forgive me, I'm getting there. Just the power of coca leaves and divination. I might go get another glass of water while you continue to talk about.
Okay. I'll mention something about, when you say divination, there's a book that's a 4,000-year-old book that we use called the I Ching, or some people pronounce it as I Ching. Some of you may be familiar with this. And it's a book of divination, but Taoists consider it as a tool for self-cultivation. So the one I use, called The Book of Changes and the Unchanging Truth, is by my Taoist teacher, Ching, who is 102 right now. So far, so good. And it's like, how can you use any situation in your life, whether it's this big time of obstruction or challenge, how can you use that for your spiritual cultivation? Most people, when they're in a state of maybe a medical crisis or obstruction of some kind, and they feel like they just want it to go away, right? They want to just get through it. And instead of learning how to use it as medicine, because everything can be medicine, right? Plants, other people, good books, all these things can be used as medicine. Medicine just means something that's for healing you. So there's a lot of different ways that people have been using medicine for thousands of years. And I tend to not be too much of a new age kind of guy. I tend to be what I consider myself an old age guy. I like to go to the traditional things. And though I use a computer, I write my books, put them together on a computer, I record music on the computer, but my spirit is still connected to the traditional ways. And even traditional ways, some of the older traditions were very abusive to women, right? It was men who were the priests, men who were the shamans, and women were pushed to the back. A lot of these traditional societies, like in India and places, we think, oh, these wonderful traditional societies are very cruel to women. So we're trying to move the old teachings in a new way that's more inclusive of everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a process of integrating, isn't it? The wisdom traditions to as we evolve, and taking those ancient traditions, but also adapting to human rights and the practices that we now know. Yeah. So we'll probably talk for another 10-15 minutes, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A.
Okay.
So maybe if we can, a little bit about balancing the yin and the yang, and then I'd love to talk about childlike enthusiasm because there's huge synergy with psychedelics.
Okay. Well, yin yang, it's people say yin and yang. It's really yin / yang. It's two sides of the same coin. Originally, the word for yang meant a sunny side of a hill. Yin was the shady side of a hill. And it's really like yang is considered kind of expansive, like summer. Summer's the yang period of joy, expansion, creativity, where yin is more that receptive, going deep within. And we need both. Many people think yang is the only way to get things done, or they just want to connect to their big fiery yang energy, be a rock and roll star, or whatever world they're living in. And they look at people who are more receptive, more interior, more meditative as, there's something wrong with them. They don't have the good energy like I do. But if if yang didn't have yin to push off of, it would get no traction. And in our life, sometimes we're in a very young period of our life. We're getting a lot done. We're creating, we're doing all these things. And then, everyone has cycles. And then as the cycle changes, we find ourselves in a lower cycle, or at least in a more yin way, where it's not the time to start a new business, start a new relationship, try to get things done in the world. It's a time to be quiet and think about a little bit about your life and what has brought you here to this time of your life, and all the things that led to you, all the things, many of which you hated at the time, have you can turn into medicine. There's a quote here. I just remembered. I just happen to have this thing. Oh, it's not in here. Oh well. Right here. All right. Well, I don't want to take all the time with this. Everyone has cycles, just like the planet has cycles. And sometimes we're in a low cycle, sometimes we're in a high cycle. When we're in a high cycle, we have to be careful not to overdo or overextend ourselves. Because you're in a high cycle, you think, I can do anything, and then you overextend, and then you find yourself in a lower cycle, and suddenly you're in trouble. Or when you're in a high cycle, realize it's really great, you're loving it, but you realize I am going to move into a lower cycle at some point, just naturally. And then when you're in a low cycle, don't be freaking out and kicking the walls and thinking, oh, my life is over, I'm in a low cycle, I can't get anything done. Really appreciate it. Just like we were talking earlier, when a woman's on her moon or menses, some cultures would put them in a separate area. And part of it was the men felt like, they would harm their medicine. But actually, the women were getting together by themselves without having the men to order them around or anything. They were having a great time together. So you can look at it in different ways. And just to remember, when you're in a low cycle, it's not going to last forever. And when you're in a high cycle, realize this isn't going to last forever either, and be good with that. And one of my favorite lines in the Tao Te Ching, he said, the sage returns people to their childlike heart. So that's those idea of being a child into the kingdom, or being childlike, not childish, but childlike, meaning, wow, this world is still very exciting. There are still new things to learn, new things to explore, like a child, not being some jaded adult. Well, I'm an adult now. I'm putting away childish things. I'm going to be serious now. And you see these people dancing and drumming and all these kinds of things. And obviously they are not serious people, right? And sometimes the most serious people seem like the most lighthearted people, are the ones who are really going deep. And the ones who have all kinds of degrees after their names are not necessarily wise. They may be intellectually smart, but not very wise. And the simplest person who can't even read or write in the jungles where you go, can be very wise, may not have a lot of knowledge they have a lot of knowledge about their world, not the world at large, but that doesn't matter, because their wisdom is true wisdom. It's belly knowledge.
There's a couple of things I wanted to pick up on there, just the Dantian, the belly knowledge. And I think the more that you start working with your Dantian and dropping into your instincts, that gut wisdom, it's a very helpful tool for psychedelic medicine and life, because often clients come to me and they will say, what did this part of the psychedelic journey mean? And I'll say, ask that region, ask your belly, drop in beyond the mind into the belly.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to, the highs and the lows, when we learn to fall in love with the alchemy of that through preparation and integration, you learn to move with the teachings of those cycles as opposed to being at war with them.
What you just said can be used on an ayahuasca journey or even a meditation retreat or a meditation practice. To what was the three terms you just used? Preparation, preparing yourself, maybe unplugging your phone, unplugging your computer, or maybe going to a place in nature, and then having the experience, meditation, qigong, ayahuasca journey, and then super important, right? The integration. So it's not just, oh, I had this great experience in the jungle, I got really high, or I had this experience where I meditated for 24 hours, but how can you integrate it into the rest of your life? And that's something I imagine you spend a lot of time with people, with clients.
Yeah, I always quote, and everyone, you've heard me, all my students have heard me say this quote many times, but after enlightenment comes the laundry.
Right.
And that can be a dangerous time for people if they've put all their hopes into the psychedelic to get them away from suicidal thoughts or to get them away from, trauma memories. They experience this awe and this wonder and these natural realms, and then they drop back, into similar states of pain and suffering, and and the mundane of life. But as the more that you learn to work with those cycles, and not be at war with them, and know that the up is coming, so is the down, and learn to trust that it will move. Oh, I apologize. My health is steadily declining. Was there was there anything else on that list that you'd like to speak to before opening up?
I don't have the list, so I don't really know. It's just a question.
It's in the chat, maybe.
But I'm happy to talk to people with questions.
Yeah, might help me, guys. So feel free. So Solala, if you want to just people who speak out or put their hand up, just go.
And there's a few people that have written in the chat already.
Do you want to speak to those ones first?
Yeah, let's see. Calligraphy is movement, not the written form. Recently, I've been trying to be more present with all food moments. No distraction, just eating, enjoying the moment and flavors. I never thought to do this with my morning tea, but I will now. Thank you for that. That's great. That's great. And someone else said, I love the sentiment about the degrees and resonate with the belief of wisdom. Okay. Yeah, if there's any questions people have, I'm happy to answer the best of my ability. And you'll need to unmute yourself.
Go for it, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for your time today. Great chat. Just wanted, you mentioned the heart a couple of times. Just wanted to, you could talk about the importance of the heart regarding the Tao, and
Yes, in Chinese medicine and Taoist medicine, the heart is considered the emperor of all the other organs. And in Taoist philosophy, Chinese medicine, what we think of as the mind, the cognitive mind, is said to reside in the heart. So even in the West, we have those old things about follow your heart, learning something by heart. Not only that, but what we consider our Shen, or spiritual aspect, also resides in the heart. So it's super, super important area, and it's considered the middle dantian. When we're first starting a Qigong practice, a meditation practice, we usually start with the lower dantian because people are not grounded and rooted and don't have a deep connection to that area. And it's just like when you're building a house, you build the foundation first, not the roof. And there's a little practice. Let me just go over this just for a few minutes. There's a little practice that you can do anytime you're feeling kind of bothered, bewildered. It's called grounding and rooting. And it's either sitting in a chair with your feet flat on the ground or on the floor. And even under your floor, even if you're 15 floors above, eventually you go down far enough, you'll reach the earth. Or if you're standing, even better, as with your mind intent, send roots from the bottom of your feet down into the earth at least 3 times the length of your body, way down there, so that you're like a tree. We see people, when you say, what does a tree look like? Well, it has a trunk, it has branches and leaves and fruit. But actually under the earth is sometimes an even bigger part of the tree. And most people in the modern world are very ungrounded, right? Very unrooted. Things, they're knocked over very easily, emotionally, psychically, psychologically, physically. And so just to do that practice alone, sending roots down into the earth and really feeling really solid, like you are a solid tree. The wind can come by, but it doesn't blow you down because your roots are so strong. So that's just a very simple practice, but it can have a real effect on your life. Yeah.
I'll just add a medicine I work with, San Pedro. It's known very much as the way of the heart, because it's an empathogen. It opens up opens up your heart, and in a very embodied way. So you're not just journeying into the astral, you're journeying relationally. You really looking and feeling into all the relationships of your ecosystem. There's a beautiful practice mid ceremony which we do, is a heart meditation. So you can feel the cactus, you can feel the mescaline, but you actually go into your heart. And yeah, so there's beautiful ways that you can weave in meditation and certain centers in your body at certain stages of the journey, not necessarily in the peak, but just after, when you've got a little bit more space.
You can integrate. Yeah, we even in the West, we have these things like they spoke very heartfelt, or they were really warm-hearted. You know, we have all these things that we knew at some point in the past, even in the West, people had this idea of the heart being so important. And you mentioned earlier the rose in mystical Christianity, then rose is also a very potent symbol. Yeah.
Beautiful flower to have in your home, at your altar is the rose.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Questions or comments even?
Yeah.
I see some yellow hands over there.
Where are they coming from?
They're trying to unmute themselves, I think.
Thank you, Solala, for sharing with us today. I just have one tiny question. I understand, as you mentioned, that, like the Tao Te Ching medicine has been around for a very, very long time. Like, I was just wondering, how has it been preserved, like down through the ages? Like, is it mostly being practiced, or maybe through stories or songs, or yeah?
Yeah, all of those. Yeah, stories. I have another book here. I'll do another quick commercial. We'll put this on the chat maybe later. Tales from the Tao, which is my version of 2,000-year-old stories from Taoists that I've kind of rewritten and opened up a little bit. Because I think most people can learn about spiritual practices through stories. It's so much easier than reading some serious book about it. And people have been telling stories for, since Neolithic times, if not before. Perhaps even before people were able to speak, they were using symbols, they were telling stories. They go into these thousands-of-year-old caves, right, and see this art. And it's not art like, I want to be a good artist so I can sell part of this cave or something. It's like, it's a story they're telling. And then also in modern psychology, we talk about sometimes people are so stuck in their story of what they've experienced or who they are, or how the world has treated them badly or something. And we want to pull them out of that story a little bit so they can open their horizons a little more. So definitely stories, music, tea, meditation, qigong, Chinese medicine, which is a natural kind of medicine, you know, all these kinds of things people still use like we did thousands of years ago.
Beautiful. And I just wanted to pick up there on the power of storytelling. And I guess with psychedelics is that it does break us out of the stories that we've been telling ourselves, or that our culture or our parents or our religion, you know, and what can happen then is people can be left with no story or no narrative, and they don't know where to go. And, you know, this is where it's really important to have contemplative practices that can then bring you back into what you value, because you might not know what your story is, what your religion is, you know, what happened in your past, but if you can drop into, you know, values, and also playing with story through poetry, through writing, through, you know, the Imaginos, through symbols, it'll help you integrate better.
You know, there's a very famous Taoist story that probably everyone has heard, that I have my version of in this book, but the story of the master, well, the story is that there's a butterfly flitting around, going from flower to flower, living its own beautiful natural butterfly life. And then suddenly there's a massive change, and there's a person, a body of a master, and he wakes up. He, quote, wakes up, and he still has this feeling so strongly of what it was like to be free, to be fluttering around in the wind as a butterfly. And he's thinking, well, now I'm a person, which, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of human beings think is the penultimate of life. But he's saying, you know, if I really think about it, how do I know that I'm a man dreaming he was a butterfly? Or how do I know it could possibly be a butterfly who's now dreaming I'm a man? And, you know, the Taoists talk a lot about this idea that this is all a dream, that we're all dreaming. And we think we know who we are. We think we know what we're doing. We think we know what the world exactly is. But it's really, we're all in a form of dreaming. And so not to get too attached to the dream, to open ourselves through meditation, yoga, qigong, psychedelic medicine, so that we can kind of break out of the dream and go through that portal. You know, I grew up in the 60s, so I was very, very neurotic and internal and very closed down when I was in high school. I never went on a date, didn't go to the prom. My picture wasn't in the yearbook. I was really closed down. And then the 60s happened, and I used LSD and mescaline, smoked a lot of weed, and it really opened a lot of doors for me. And then at one point I decided the doors were open, but I needed to go through them. So I stopped taking the psychedelics. But yeah, I mean, we were taking them. It wasn't like a beautiful journey, what Alana does. It was like, well, go see the Grateful, drops the mask to go see the Grateful Dead. So it was kind of like a, you know, that kind of thing. But it brought me out of my cocoon so that I could be the butterfly that I'd always wanted to be. And so I will always be grateful to that time. And it was a different time. It was more safe to do those kind of stuff in public. I mean, and a lot of people were about opening themselves up, what we called expanding our consciousness, opening ourselves up to include the whole rest of the world, all the world rushing in.
That's
there was another yellow hand.
One sec. I think just a beautiful point there that much of our society is about, you know, order and work and production and you know, contraction to a certain degree, contracting. And, you know, we all need to find our door, our portal into the dreaming and beyond. And I just really invite anyone in this group today to reflect, you know, have you opened that portal? Have you found that door? And whatever method or means. And, you know, because, yeah, there's so much mystery and magic through those doors, but it's about finding the right one for you. And then how do you stabilize that so that you can still be human and pay your bills and do all the stuff that earthlings have to do. And I think for me personally, it's about balancing that, the mystery and the magic and the childlike play with, the responsibilities of being a human and showing up on those levels. So finding that balance in that dance.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and people do journeys, whether it's a psychedelic journey, whether it's a meditation journey. The idea is, at least part of it is, so you can connect with the spirit world. So you can connect with your guiding spirits, your ancestral spirits, nature spirits. So you can hear what in the Bible says, the still small voice within. So that you're not thinking, I have to figure it all out. You can get help, not just from books, but from actually connecting to the spirit world, and whatever tools you use, that can be super helpful in your life.
We'll get to you, Rasni, in one sec. And I think that is the power of working with psychedelics and plants, is if you do so in a supported and integrated way, you start to feel less alone in this giant cosmos. You know, we're a giant Earth floating in space, not a whole lot of answers. And that's for a lot of people, that's extremely overwhelming. But I think with these medicines, you start to feel these elements and forces and moving and working through you, and it you feel less alone. So I just encourage people to open up to the potential of beyond your human consciousness. There's, and being in more symbiosis with other forms of consciousness that are out there, that are available to us all, once we kind of open that portal, that door.
Well, as you know, Alana, these plants have a kind of intelligence, right? It's not just some plant you pull out of the ground. It actually has a kind of intelligence, and actually has a living spirit. And even Qi, when we talk about Qigong, Qi is like what the vital life force in everything. And this Qi also has a kind of intelligence. So when we're doing Qigong, we're doing movements, we're doing meditation, sometimes we're doing sound, we're accessing this Qi that surrounds us, just like a fish in the ocean. And then we're able to access this Qi and bring it into our body, and sometimes move it around in different parts of our body and store it in our body. That's basically what Qigong is. Discovering, accessing, and storing and activating our own Qi. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And it can help so much. Like, it cured me of an incurable disease. And I've seen many other people be helped. I would never tell anyone I'm guaranteed, you come to my class, I guarantee I will cure your brain tumor. If you're really a real teacher, you don't do a healer, even, you don't do that. But to do Qigong, to do something that raises your vitality, can help your mind, your thoughts being able to settle down a little more, your emotions not being on a big roller coaster that many people's are, and to make you more wiser even. And then make you be a person that can help other people. My first Qigong teacher, a woman from China, she was not really a Taoist, but she said, Qi is love. We do this Qigong so we become stronger, and our love becomes stronger, and then we can pass that on to somebody else. And their Qi and their love can be stronger, and they can pass it on to somebody else. And even on that level, that's a very real thing.
Absolutely. And Rasni, good to see you.
Thanks for your time, Solala. It is quite fascinating about hearing more philosophical side that I've not heard about. Just to have a quick question. While you were answering most of the questions, I just realized that how you connected, especially with the Western part of the biggest faith, which is Christianity and the Bible and things like that. And I also heard one thing that actually stuck with me is that people are scared to let go of that personal relationship with God. I think it also comes from a lot of accountability as well, like personal accountability. So if I'm doing something wrong, someone is actually watching over me to doing something wrong. And how do you actually let go and reconcile that part of having accountability, still not thinking that someone is not looking over you?
The universe itself will hold you accountable. The law of karma, the law of cause and effect, what you sow, you will reap. You're putting out negative energy all the time. People react to that. And then you're feeling like, well, the world's a terrible place. Everybody treats me really badly. And I'm sure because I experience that all the time. And then other people are sending out positive feelings, positive vibration, being very grateful, very friendly, very warm. And they find that other people respond to them also. And it's kind of like spitting into the wind. You get it back in your face. So there is a universal law of cause and effect. That has nothing to do with religion or any certain kind of god or goddess or anything like that. That the more you are in sync, in tune with the positive aspects of the world, of the universe, and of yourself, and how you're responding to the universe. Not that terrible things won't happen to you. You might get cancer, you might get run over by a truck, you know, those things happen. But for the most part, you know, it goes back. I like to quote from the Bible, just because I'm not a Christian, but a lot of people in the West are Christians, so they know these kind of things, these ideas. What you sow, you will reap. In my version of the Bible, Jesus was a Qigong master. He went around healing people, hands-on healing. And there's one story where he's walking down the street and some very ill person comes into his chi field, because our chi field extends out from our body. And in the Bible, it says, touch the hem of his garment. So he could feel, and the person was healed. So he could feel, in my version, he's going down the street, he's a Qigong master, he feels some of his Qi going out into another person, and he stops and he looks around and says, who just touched me? And that person is healed. And Jesus going on a vision quest for 49 days in the desert, probably fasting. And he has this vision of, he was a super powerful being, and he had two roads he could take. He could become a political leader, you know, and make a lot of money and control a lot of people, or he could take the spiritual path, because he had a lot of powers that way too. But it's not sure how it would end, and it didn't end up very well with him. But in the Bible, as Satan came to him and told him, I show you the world, you can have that. And he says, get thee behind me, Satan. I think it's on his vision quest, he decided in himself, he wasn't going to go for the world of power and politics. He was going to go the world for spirituality and healing. And we all get to do that, whether we're on a journey with Alana, whether we go into our own inner journey, a retreat, or just experiment with our life and how we're dealing with the world. We all get to do that. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but.
No, it did. It did. Quite fascinating.
Okay.
And thank you for relating so much.
Okay.
And your storytelling is amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
And I should just add there that you know, the medicines are also, you know, there is responsibility. It's what you reap and what you sow, with particularly with some of the bigger medicines. San Pedro seems to be a little bit gentler subjectively, but ayahuasca, for example, if you just keep drinking ayahuasca and you don't listen to the messages, or if you don't embody them, people can get quite sick. The journeys can get very harrowing and things can fall apart. So these medicines do require a relational element and a discipline, and a, you know, what you reap is what you sow. And if you listen, if you try to integrate, you know, the medicine can reward you profoundly. But if you just keep consuming and don't have that reciprocity with the plant, that can be really slap you down. So it's just a word of caution. It's a relationship you enter into with these medicines.
Yeah, because the plant has an intelligence, as I was saying earlier. It has a very powerful effect on our body, our psyche, all those kinds of things. But like you say, it doesn't necessarily change who you are, as far as I understand. And as you say, if you continue down the dark road and you're just doing it to gain some sort of power over others, maybe, or something, the plant medicine is not going to be as helpful to you, because parts of you are shut down. And the more you can open up, the more you can get out of the experience, whether it's yoga, meditation, qigong, a retreat, even doing a retreat for a weekend, even doing a retreat in your own home, unplugging everything and just going within and eating very simply, like you did with the rose tea. There's so many tools we have.
And again, just speaking to that childlike play, which, you know, I just want to acknowledge so many people have had really, really traumatic childhoods, and they've had that part of their life robbed from them, you know, the freedom to play, to be safe, to imagine. You know, some children never get that. And the power of psychedelic is you can actually re-experience those states and reclaim them and start working with them alchemically, which is really healing for complex PTSD. But calling in the child, some little practices I do before I drink ayahuasca, because it can be very serious. I start to get very scared a lot of the time. The ego, the lights go off. So what I've started doing is actually smiling while the medicine's coming in. I smile like a child waiting for like Christmas or a lolly, excitement, and that has helped the medicine come in softer. Doesn't necessarily always stay soft, but it's choosing to stay open and in that wonder and that play, because people can get quite serious with the medicine, and we need to keep that play alive.
Even meditation, when I teach people meditation, whenever you see a statue or painting of the Buddha, he has a little smile. Even if you're doing your meditation, I'm doing my serious meditation now. If you sit there, you've got a little bit of smile, you have a feeling of a lightness of being, then you're going to be able to spread your wings and be that beautiful butterfly much easier than if you're sitting there with a frown on. And you may have heard of this guy. One of my friends, one of my cultural heroes, is a guy named Wavy Gravy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But anyway, look him up sometime. He's an amazing being. Anyway, one of my favorite lines of his is, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood."
Yes.
And that's what worked for me. I never got into my childhood till I was about 18, because I had a very shut down childhood. But once I got away from my family of origin and got away from Catholicism and all that other stuff, then I was able to be a child again and go through that. Because it's important, right? If you don't have a childhood, then you're not a whole adult. And it's never too late, like you're saying, to use different modes of healing to heal that childhood, and also to induce that feeling. The sage returns people to their childlike heart. The teacher, the healer, the sage, that's really important. And that's, you have to follow all these rules. If you break any of these rules, you get kicked out. Any kind of cult kind of thing is like that. And many religions are like that. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Beautiful. I love that saying. And that's so synergistic with trauma work, with internal family systems. It's a therapy I work with, and psychedelics. It's never too late to have a childhood. And thank you.
Never too late to have a happy childhood.
Yeah, have a happy one. Even step it up.
Yeah.
Wondrous, amazing childhood. So I've only got a couple more minutes before we finish up.
Oh, good heavens.
Yeah, thanks everyone today for your patience. I didn't want to cancel this or adjust it, so I've showed up, but I've showed up in average health, and I've done my best. So, but is anyone
doing great?
Thank you. Any last questions? Emily just made a comment. She's gone back to traditional land, Aboriginal land, and her children have put away all the devices, and they've just been in a space of storytelling. So just the power of the lost art of storytelling, I think, in modern culture with children. We often let the schools take care of it, but we're not actually cultivating that storytelling in our homes. So really important.
I told my children lots of stories as they grew up.
Yeah, it's incredible medicine.
Mm-hmm.
One of my little boys actually asked once, because we do storytelling, he wasn't sure if it was real, or he's like, is that story actually real? And I love that, because he's still in that fantasy phase. He couldn't differentiate between what was real or not. I was like, oh, how fun to be in the land of play. Yeah,
there was I don't remember, I think A.K. Chesterton, something like that, a Western philosopher. I loved his line is, angels can fly because they take themselves so lightly. When you're doing a journey, your meditation journey, yoga journey, ayahuasca journey, if you have that feeling of lightness, of being, it's going to be a whole different experience. And sure, sometimes the first time, or people have certain fears, but the more they can let go of those and feel a little bit of lightness, a little buoyancy under their wings, the whole experience can be so much more positive.
Absolutely.
And even just starting your day, I'm going to be grateful for this day. I'm going to be grateful for the blessings as well as the challenges.
Yeah. The rose and the thorn, we say at our table. What was the rose? What was the beauty of the day? And what was the thorn that you had to, deal with?
One of the traditional peoples in my end of the world is the Hopi people, and they have this term of a one-hearted person. is somebody who speaks straight, comes from their heart. A lot of people in the modern world, they call two-hearted people. They're saying one thing out of one side of their mouth, something else the other side of the mouth, or they're saying something with their mouth, but they're thinking something else with their mind or their heart. And to be let go of being a two-hearted person and being a one-hearted person is a much high level.
It's a beautiful, beautiful imagery.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. And a strong reflection point throughout your journey. Are you walking the way of the heart and one-hearted? I think that's a beautiful image to finish up with. So thank you. I don't think we've got any other questions.
Let me say one other thing is these things, we've been talking about Qigong meditation, these kind of things, that comes from Taoism, but you don't have to become a quote Taoist. You don't have to change your religion, you know, what other kind of spiritual path you're on, you can still use these tools. They're free. We're not gonna, you don't have to sign on the dotted line to join some sort of Taoist cult or anything. It's open for everyone. And hopefully at the end here, we'll put like my website up there where you can, there's a lot of free music, guided meditations, interviews with Taoist masters, a video from China. That's all free, and also talks about my classes and things.
Beautiful. So if you can get that stuff to me, I'll send that out in the show notes and put it on the website and send it out to everyone. Great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward personally to journeying. He's got a program that goes through do you want to describe that, the 81 way?
Yeah, well, using my book, you know, this one, the Tao Te Ching, we go over usually 2 chapters a night of going over, I read what it says, and then I explain what it means, and then we do a practice, a simple meditation or Qigong practice or lifestyle practice, and so that it's something that can be useful. When I wrote this book, I wanted it to be useful, not just a book somebody reads and then puts down, but something that could be really of use to people, that they can learn things they can adapt and adopt to their own life. So I've been doing it a weekly Tao Te Ching class for a little over 3 years, about 3¼ years now. And you know, we were talking earlier what I consider all this Zoom things like we're doing right now as part of cyber Tao. So we all get to be, you know, in COVID, it was all about your bubble, you know, learning your bubble, staying in your bubble. And it's kind of like right now we are connecting from places all over the world, and we're all in this beautiful bubble together right now. This is our family for this moment of time. And it's great that we get to do this.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom and your, you know, over 30-year contribution and more to this field and to, you know, the natural world and natural healing. And yeah, it's been a real privilege to be here today. And your book really helped me during pretty fouette stage of my ayahuasca integration, just bring in that balance, bringing in the cheese. So thank you. And yeah, if anyone else has questions, let me know afterwards. And there's lots happening at the Science of Life, so stay tuned as we bring these medicines to Australia and do our best to kind of raise that vibration. So yeah, leading with the heart and looking after people in psychedelic states, in altered states, doing a really good job of integrating and stabilizing this in an embodied way. So thank you so much, everyone. Go enjoy your weekend.
Yes, thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you.
Here.
Take care. Bye.